It's a pleasure. It's an honor to be here. Thank you, everyone. Sorry I was a bit late. And thank you, Air Marshal Bhaduria. And greetings to ACM Brown. He's on our board of Tata Advanced Systems. I will actually make it quite short. I want to just bring out 2 points. Before that, I will simply describe a little bit about what Tata Advanced Systems does as a background. And this is where my own learnings come and my comments come from. Today, Tata Advanced Systems, which is the aerospace and defense company of the Tata Group, builds the C295 aircraft final assembly line, but also is doing the aerostructures behind it, the detailed parts that go behind it. So literally from getting the aluminum ingots, as it were, to making a flyaway aircraft is done by Tata Advanced Systems, with, of course, support of our OEM partner, Airbus, for the Indian Air Force. Along with this, we are doing aerostructures work for a large number of global OEM companies. We do the Apache helicopter, we do the empennage of the CE-130, and so on and so forth. So there are many, many such projects that we have been doing for quite some time. In addition to building final aircraft, we're also now going to build a helicopter for Airbus. Yes, it is built to print, a final assembly line, but these are the steps that industry needs to take. In addition to aircraft and helicopters, we have a large investment ongoing in potentially going forward in defense MRO, which we will actually establish with Lockheed Martin soon, very shortly. And also we are going in for conversions of aircraft. And finally, let me just simply put that we have a large investment in unmanned systems, not all of it which we have declared so far. So in some sense, we do have perhaps some experience in what is working and what is not working from the private sector in India for aerospace and defense, whether we call it Atmanirbharta, Make in India, and so on and so forth. What I'd really like to say, though, is that what is perhaps not working. I think there is a general sense that India has achieved quite a bit. And I'm certainly not, we are just a small percentage of the total ecosystem out here, so please take it with that filter. But looking at the environment, looking at the kind of technologies that are changing, it seems to me that a big gap still exists. And towards that, I think, in my opinion, we need to start by asking ourselves, what is the objective of what we call Make in India? What we call Atmanirbharta. In my mind, from a government's perspective, if you just simply say Make in India, it seems to be like jobs. That's something that was being done abroad, should be done in India. It's as simple as that. It'll create jobs. And I think that's a very worthy objective to have. But surely from the forces perspective, and taking a larger arc, strategic arc over all of this, our intent ought to be strategic control. Strategic control so that, in a manner of speaking, we have our own destiny, we control our own destiny, but really, importantly, to be able to have control over key technologies that amount to having a place in the world, but certainly protecting India. I think one of the metrics of that would be to ask ourselves that any technology that comes into India or we develop, can we actually build the next few generations of that aircraft in India by ourselves? Can we export that particular product? Because if you cannot do either of the two, because of the way that you have thought about technology development, that means that you have a lot of dependencies on other actors that may or may not impede you in these two things. So towards that, the next point I would like to say is that our policy is not structured towards supporting this. I think I'm not saying anything new. And I do recognize that policy is really a life journey. No country's policy is always ever reached a conclusion which is best in class. And so would be the case with our country. But I think we have to recognize that anything like this is a function of where we should be relative to our own needs. It is not enough to say that in 2010 and 2005, we are much better off since then. I think we have to ask ourselves, are we better, the situation we're in right now, as sort of benchmarked to what we need as a country, are we good enough for that? And my suggestion would be that there is so much of low-hanging fruit, in a manner of speaking, so much of things that can be done to improve the situation that one must point those things out. So while we may have improved, and whether we've improved or not is also a case in point, I'm sure Mr. Kaushish will tell us that the DPP or DAP or whatever the terminology of that is, that book has only become bigger and bigger, which is not a good idea in terms of acquisition. But wherever we are today, our needs are much greater. One of the key things I want to therefore say that, having defined strategic objective, hopefully to be a function of being able to control technologies going forward, there is very little in the policy or the practice that allows companies like Tata's to go ahead and proactively invest in R&D. We are not incentivized to do so. And I would be the first person who can tell you this way or that way because we practice it every day. The situation today is that if we do some proactive R&D investment, we do not know whether it will have a path forward with the customer. After all, these are military products. We don't build it for a customer market. It's not that if you can't sell it to the military, you can sell it to the customer, to a retail customer. So if we, as a group, want to invest, we want to risk capital, which is important for anyone, we don't have to go through arguments to prove that. And today, if we build something, and I take it to the customer, he will get into a complete situation of being, wondering how to take it forward, because he will say, well, I will actually have to start the whole process, take it out on the website, and so on and so forth. And if he does so, and if we've spent 5 years developing something, there is no reason why we would want the process to start from scratch. Otherwise, why would we want to have a first mover advantage? What I just said is important, because we are the capital providers in the private sector, one of the capital providers, one of the potential capital providers. And if we are saying that the incentives are not geared for us to be able to build and offer projects which are world-class in aerospace for the customer because of the mechanisms which are available for the forces or the bureaucrats are such that they cannot process it forward, I think it might be of some interest to be discussed. I know that people will say the following to what I just said, and I would like to point out what they will say. Perhaps that makes no sense to me. They will say that you have Make 1. They will say you have Make 2. They will say I have Buy Indian IDDM. They will say I have Aditi. We don't have enough time, perhaps in this forum, to be able to discuss that. But you just have to look at the percentage of the number of projects that have gone through this. And if someone says that we've got 10 projects going, 15 projects going, I would like to point out, what is the ideal number that you ought to have by this stage of your development? Is it 10? Is it 15? And even those 10 and 15, how shallow or deep are they? So I think I would like to, because at some point I can take the liberty of speaking more frankly, perhaps, and I would like to do so, that we should not pat ourselves on the back and say that we've done enough. We've done this policy, we've done that policy, we've started this Aditi and that IDEX and this and that. I think in the scheme of things, we are moving incrementally, whereas the region and our geopolitics requires us to make leaps and bounds of movement. Thank you.